They thought they were just harassing another black family, until the father quietly reached into his wallet and pulled out the badge that would change everything. The Johnson family had been looking forward to this weekend for months. Michael Johnson, a hardworking father and federal agent, had finally taken a break from his intense schedule to spend time with his wife Tanya and their 2 children, Malik and Ava. They had chosen a peaceful lakeside resort known for its scenic views and family-friendly activities. The long drive was filled with laughter, snacks, and road trip games. But the moment they pulled into the resort's parking lot, the mood began to shift. As they stepped out of their SUV, Michael immediately noticed a white resort security guards eyeing them from a distance. Their expressions weren't welcoming. It was more suspicion than courtesy. Tanya squeezed Michael's hand, sensing the tension but trying to stay positive for the kids. Inside the lobby, things only got worse. The receptionist hesitated when she saw them approach. "What name is the reservation under?" she asked, her tone flat. Michael calmly gave his name, but after typing for a few seconds, she frowned. "I'm sorry, I don't see anything under that name." Michael showed the confirmation email on his phone, but she barely glanced at it. Moments later, she excused herself and walked into the back office. Confused and frustrated, the family waited, trying to keep the children entertained. Suddenly, 2 police officers walked into the lobby, their presence heavy. One of them looked directly at Michael and said, "We've had reports of some disturbance. Are you guests here?" The question hit like a slap. Michael kept his cool, but inside, anger stirred. This wasn't a mistake. This was something deeper, something far too familiar. The family vacation had barely begun, and already, they were being treated like intruders in a place they had every right to be. Michael stood tall, shielding his family as the officers stepped closer. "We've received a call about suspicious activity," the taller one said, eyes fixed sharply on Michael. Tanya clutched Malik and Ava close, their excitement now replaced with confusion and fear. "Suspicious activity," Michael repeated, struggling to stay calm. "We just arrived. We haven't even checked in yet." The officer ignored his words and asked for ID, pressing further with questions about the car, where they were coming from, and why they were there. Michael explained again that they had a confirmed reservation and showed his ID, but the officers didn't seem interested in the truth. Tanya spoke up, trying to diffuse the tension. "Is this normal protocol? We booked this resort weeks ago. We're just here with our children to relax." One officer gave her a dismissive glance before turning his attention back to Michael. Guests in the lobby started watching, some whispering, some recording on their phones. No one stepped in. No one questioned the treatment this family was receiving. The receptionist reappeared and mumbled, "Still looking for your reservation." Without meeting their eyes, it was clear they weren't being seen as guests. They were being seen as threats. Michael felt the familiar burn of humiliation and anger building, but he refused to let it show in front of his children. He knew how quickly these situations could spiral out of control. Every word, every gesture, had to be measured. His training told him to stay calm, but his heart was breaking as he looked at the fear in his daughter's eyes. This wasn't just about a vacation anymore, it was about dignity. It was about standing firm in the face of injustice and showing his children how to do the same. Michael had had enough. The officer's tone grew more aggressive, their questions circling back to the same doubts: where he was from, who the car belonged to, if he was carrying anything illegal. All while Tanya held their children close, her voice soft but trembling, trying to keep them calm. Michael's patience was being tested, but he knew he had to stay composed. He took a slow breath, then calmly reached into his back pocket. One of the officers stiffened, hand moving. "Near his weapon, easy," he warned. Michael moved deliberately and pulled out a slim leather wallet. He opened it, and inside gleamed the unmistakable gold badge of a federal agent. "Detective Michael Johnson, FBI," he said firmly, holding the badge up just long enough for both officers to see. The air in the lobby shifted instantly. The confident, intimidating expressions on the officers' faces melted into awkward silence. Their posture changed. One cleared his throat, suddenly, unsure. We didn't realize, sir," he stammered. Michael's gaze didn't waver. "No, you didn't. You never asked. You saw a black man with his family and assumed we didn't belong." His voice was calm, but the weight in his words was impossible to ignore. Guests who had been watching now looked uncomfortable, some even ashamed. The phone that had been recording zoomed in on the badge, catching the moment Justice turned the tables. The hotel manager rushed over, flustered, apologizing, suddenly eager to make things right. The missing reservation was magically found, the suite ready and waiting. But the damage was already done. Michael hadn't raised his voice. He hadn't moved aggressively. He didn't need to. His badge had spoken louder than any defense. But what haunted him most was knowing if he hadn't shown it, the story could have ended very differently. As the hotel manager nervously handed over the room keys, Michael took them without a word. The officers were still standing there, now trying to explain themselves. "It was a misunderstanding," one mumbled. "We were just following protocol." Michael met his eyes and replied quietly, Your protocol is broken. Tanya, still shaken, gently guided the kids toward the elevator, whispering reassurances they shouldn't have needed in the first place. Guests who had watched everything unfold now avoided eye contact. A few looked embarrassed, some whispered apologies under their breath, but none had spoken up when it mattered. A young man with a phone in his hand approached Michael and said, "I recorded everything. I've seen things like this online, but seeing it in person hits different. Thank you for keeping calm." Michael gave a small nod but said nothing. He wasn't looking for praise. He was just trying to protect his family. Upstairs in the suite, which was suddenly upgraded with compliments, Tanya sat quietly on the edge of the bed while the kids played by the window, unaware of how serious things had been. "I was scared," she admitted. Michael sat beside her, rubbing his hands together slowly. "So was I," he said honestly, "but I had to show them we wouldn't be broken." Down in the lobby, the hotel manager was already trying to contain the fallout. The video was spreading online, and whispers of the incident were turning into louder conversations. Michael didn't want revenge. What he wanted was for people to see what happened and ask why it had to come to that. All they had wanted was a peaceful vacation, but the ugly truth had surfaced again, and this time, it left no room for excuses. The lake was calm, the sky soft, with early light. The Johnson family packed their bags quietly, not because they were in a hurry to leave, but because the resort no longer felt like a place of peace. Tanya helped the kids zip up their backpacks while Michael stood by the window, sipping coffee, deep in thought. Last night's events had left a mark visible and invisible. Though the resort offered them a full refund and countless apologies, none of it could erase what had happened. Michael wasn't bitter. He was tired of fighting battles he never asked for, but he was also determined. As they made their way down to checkout, a few guests approached with quiet nods of respect. One woman said, "I showed your video to my kids. It made them think. Thank you." Michael gave a small, polite smile, not for praise, but for impact. That's all he wanted: change, awareness, growth. As they drove away from the resort, Malik looked up from the back seat and asked, "Dad, are you still mad?" Michael glanced at him in the mirror. "No, son, I'm not mad. I'm just proud we stood tall." Sometimes the world needs reminders of what strength and respect really look like. Tanya reached over and squeezed his hand, silently agreeing. The road stretched out ahead, and for the first time in a long while, Michael felt like they were driving toward something better. He knew the fight for justice wouldn't end here, but in that moment, surrounded by his family, he felt powerful, not because of his badge, but because of his truth. And as the resort faded in the rearview mirror, so did the pain, leaving behind a lesson no one would forget. If this story touched your heart, drop a like, share your thoughts in the comments, and spread the message. Don't forget to subscribe to Deep Wounds for more powerful and eye-opening stories.